So, Vikash, welcome to this debriefing session, and congratulations on scoring a 730. We were talking earlier, so it's a nice surprise, slightly higher than what you expected. So, how does it feel?
It is. It feels good to get the score, but I know it's just one part of the application. I'm like, it's not job complete till you get the admit in your hand
Oh
and you
no,
start joining.
it's just. In fact, it's one of those things which is your job's never complete. Even when you get into the business school, it's about your next step, because that's kind of where you eventually want to be. So, but yes, it's one part. It's one part that's ticked off. It's job well done. Good quant, good verbal scores, and phenomenal improvement. I think was looking at your first mocks on the platform was around. Um, if I remember, high 500s or so. If I remember it.
Yeah, close to 600 is what I put in as my
Mhm.
quant score. But again, you have to understand that this was with no prep, nothing. I just picked up a book, decided to see where I'm at,
Mhm.
and I know that I am average in English, but I knew I was good in quant. It was just a question of seeing where it was
Mhm.
on a test-based adaptive exam, and then knowing the fact that I have a month to give everything. I think
Yes.
uh, it made me get a lot more serious. If I'd gotten a good score at the start, I would probably have been a little more lax about my prep,
Mhm.
which I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad that I got the score I did in my practice tests and then say, I need to spend the time and effort doing it. And I was lucky enough to have a month where I could spend 10, 12 hours every single day doing just this.
So let's
I
talk
wouldn't
about.
recommend.
I know. Actually, no. If you have a month and if you can study that intensively, I think the confidence that it gives you is very solid.
It does, but you have to understand that you tend to, towards the end,
Mm.
it starts becoming harder to be able to put in those 12, 13 hours every single day.
You kind of are too you beyond
You
that peak
start plateauing,
performance.
you're
Yeah,
like, it starts
getting
hitting
stable.
your brain's starting to take in less and less. So, uh, again, luckily for me to build up that momentum, I started with quant that I was comfortable with. And I said, I'm going to take the approach of me not knowing any single topic. And I went through the entire course that way
Mhm.
rather than just starting jumping on practice questions. So I took every single uh, session where I attended, saw the videos and practiced them,
Mhm.
or looked at how you solve. Of course, I did, given the fact that I was compressing everything, a few of them that I was very confident in my approach, the time I took, as well as what I got. I did skip past a lot of the explanation part.
Mhm.
But for a few questions, which were a little more trickier, which I took a little more time just to see what can I do to try and improve it? Or is there a better way of solving it? I did look at a few of those.
Got it. Okay, and I can really see you did well in number properties, and a bunch of other courses as well. So you pretty much did most of number properties, most of algebra, and so on and so forth. So you had this 1 month. What portion of it, what part of that 1 month did you spend on the quant versus vowels? How did you split that? What was the thinking?
So his thinking was I used the GMAT personalized planner, the your e-GMAT personalized planner. I tried sticking to it as much as I could, where we had the split of, if I remember correctly, about a week and a half of quant, and
Mm-hmm.
then the rest 2 weeks was just uh, verbal
Okay.
and taking it from there. So that was my schedule from the 22nd of July to I think the 8th of August. That's how it was split up,
Okay.
and I stuck to it. Um, where I think I might have been a little bit better. Where if towards the end, especially, I started feeling if I had instead of having finished quant so early, if I'd kept a little bit of quant for later. So when my mind got saturated with verbal, I should probably have included a little more quant. But I didn't do that. Instead what I did was I just took up some practice questions for integrated reasoning and started solving this.
Okay. Okay. And then I actually have your schedule right in front of me. This is the 22nd of July when you started with the 590. It's the 15th of, did you actually take the test on 15th of August? Is that what you said earlier?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
14th. So I took the test on 15th morning.
15
Absolutely.
morning. Okay. Perfect. That is great. And you were studying like good 10 to 12 hours every day.
Every single day. Yeah. Even the days where it says a break, because like if you look at it, if you scroll down, there were a couple of days that had like 3 hours, and
Okay.
uh,
Yeah,
a
over here.
few did not
Yeah,
happen,
that didn't happen.
where those were actually because I didn't finish everything I wanted to. So those were also long days.
Oh wow. Okay, and that's good. That's diligence. I mean, that's great. I mean, you recognize that. So as you were doing this very intensive work, how did you know that
Hmm.
you were ready? I mean, let's say 10 days down in Quant, how did you know, okay, it's time for you to transition to verbal?
So for me, it was about I didn't really give too many practice exams or scholarinium at the start. I
Yes.
did not. I said, let me do as long as I kept finishing each section
Mm-hmm.
and I answered the question, I was like, yes, I know it. Let's move on. Because I know for a fact that I can't spend too much time in Quant. I know my weaker sections were going to be sentence correction
Mm-hmm.
and reading comprehension, where I would get it right, but I'm going to be slow. So I know those were my two areas that I need to be focusing on, and I need to give as much time as possible to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more about let's get down with it. I have the techniques. I have a few of the shorter formulas that, not formulas, but
Methods.
ways of solving them faster, methods to solve them faster. I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable. I can go on. And every weekend I did take the free seminar that you guys had as well
Mm-hmm.
with different topics just to say, can I solve it before you guys come up with a solution and tell me how to do it? So that was a good way of practicing it out, saying, yes, I have done this topic. Let's take a question that you put out. How am I solving it? So
Got
that's
it.
kind of how I went about it.
All right. That's very exciting. Okay. So and then so you did Quant, you did most of it. You had a background. You've already taken the GRE. So what is your Quant score on the GRE or percentile? Because presumably the scale was different then.
I haven't given the GRE was long time
Long
back.
time back, yes.
It's been I gave my GRE in 2009, so it's
9,
been
yeah.
a really long time
Mm.
since I've given GRE and gone it across. So at that time, it was graded out of I think 1600, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken, and so there I got a full 800 in
Okay.
Quant. So Quant was something I was comfortable with. It wasn't
Okay. So you went from Quant to verbal, and then you started with sentence correction as the platform recommended.
correct.
What was the biggest change for you, given the fact that you've been in the US, you already know a lot of the structures.
Uh huh.
So what hit you the most when you went through the sentence correction course?
So the thing is, a lot of times I realized the mistakes I was making was because I started overthinking my answers. Like especially towards the end when I started giving practice. We'll talk about that once I get to it. So initially I came in with a blank slate. I said, let's start with the basics of what an adverb is, what a
Mm,
pronoun, just to revise those concepts, even though I know what they are and how they work.
mm,
Especially on the modifiers part, where I understand like noun plus noun modifiers is something that I was not the best at. I haven't really used it. And
mm.
the way I write my sentence structures are more on a passive voice rather than an active voice.
Got it. Yes.
That's my writing style. I'm more in a passive tone is where I would write, and my sentences generally tend to be long as well. So that did help me out with a lot of different areas where
Mm,
I'm used to writing things in commas and sentences. So
mm,
that helped me out a lot at critical reasoning and the
mm,
bigger paragraphs where you had to say what is wrong and kind of do correction in
mm,
those.
mhm.
Those areas I was fine with. It was when you had like these short fill in with just this or find that error. There it took a little more time where I had to change the voice and I had to try and figure out how I was getting it around.
Mm,
Uh, so initially it was about going through the entire course,
mm,
but I'm like, given the fact that I don't necessarily have the time to completely change what works for me,
mhm,
it was about understanding where I can improve quickly. What areas can I really improve on?
mm,
Where I need to spend a little more time into thinking about what they're trying to say. Like I understand the entire method way of doing it, of
mm,
understanding the meaning for it and
mhm.
then solving. So that's something that we already did naturally here.
Yes.
I wasn't probably explicit about saying I know the meaning. A lot of times my instincts when I read the sentence, I could tell you what is wrong. I could fill in automatically saying this is
You
what I
could,
needed to
you
do.
could, you, yeah, you said this is what it's supposed to be in the correct form.
Correct. And then that's where I then start saying, okay, what are the mistakes? So that's how I used to solve. And I said, initially, because I was getting into doing like proper English after so long, where
Mm,
after a certain point, I'd stopped writing any major essays or research papers that I was doing. It was more about getting into that feel again of getting into what technical English is about, and
Mhm.
uh, understanding those things. So there, yes, I went through the entire course. There were a few areas where I had to spend a little more time
Mhm.
revising these concepts and understanding them, because they were not words that
Mhm.
I or analogies that I'd use in everyday life. For example, I use like, and such as, like, the major differences there. I use like to give examples.
Mhm.
I have used them in communicative English. You do use it.
You do
It's
use
not
it.
in written
Yes.
English.
Yes. Yes.
And so those were kind of things where I focused on in terms of creating notes out, saying these are things I need to be looking at, and
Mm.
making sure areas where I tend to make mistakes. So I
Got it.
created a separate book of saying these are the topics within which I'm revising where I
You
tend
made
to
your
make
own notes,
mistakes.
even though you had just about 15 days to finish all of verbal. You made your own. You made sure you
Oh,
created.
absolutely. I have my full notes for an entire book that I created, a verbal saying notes, what are the areas, what topics. And those were things I used to revise every 2 or 3 days.
So
Entire saying,
how would you make those notes? Can you be a bit more explicit about that?
give me about 10 seconds. Let me see if I
Sure.
can find
Sure.
the notes itself. I should have it somewhere here. Uh, this might be a good starting point. Let's see. So, for example, with any topic that you started off in terms of, let's take verbs, for
Mhm.
example. I would go through your entire chapter, but I would create notes out saying what works, what doesn't,
Mhm.
what topics am I not completely confident, or what my understanding of that topic is, and how does it differ from, excuse me,
Mhm.
what GMAT actually is looking for.
Got
And
it.
I created those notes out. So they were more like cheat sheets or flashcards, essentially,
Got it.
on a paper format that I could just revise and read, saying, yeah, this is what it is. This is a quick recap of the entire thing.
And you are a paper person. I mean, you make notes for other stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely. My notepad is filled with different things. So I'm always a paper person rather than on the computer screen.
Okay. All right. So that's good. That's very good. So and how would you use these notes once you made them?
So the way I made them was every second or third day, I would kind of revise through these different ones.
Just to
I would try
scroll
and
through.
scroll through it just to get an understanding. Like a lot of these, if I had kind of hard points where I wouldn't remember it, I had examples of me trying to write my own sentence, which
That's
would
excellent.
use this particular format, and then see, am I right in the way I've written them?
Are you able to apply it essentially is what you were saying?
Correct. It's essentially saying, uh, with different sentences, like different ways, I would pick up any sentence saying, can I convert it into different forms? Which form makes
Excellent.
sense, which doesn't? So that's kind of how I went about it. So that was every day, either in the morning or at the end of the day, just a recap, trying to finish it, writing these out. And I had the whiteboard with me because a physical whiteboard, so I would write it, I could erase it out, move on. Uh,
Just
with certain
on a side note over there, this is when we train experts. This is one of the exercises. What we do. This is an idea. This is what you have to express. Express it in different forms. Verb ing, verb ed. How would you go about doing
correct.
it? And the idea should
Yeah,
come.
yeah, and that's why it is like you can pretty much say the same thing in multiple different forms and try to write it out and
Mm,
write about it. Given
mm,
a few changes, I said, yeah, I can write it. I can figure out where it is. A lot of notes were definitely made in when different forms are used, how it goes about, like when is, if you have an if with past tense, what is the condition going to be, and kind of those kind of things, as well as like present continuous and how do you use it. So those were notes that I had, because a lot of times, especially with the language like English, which you've done for so many years, you don't tend to, your brain automatically tries to say this is what it needs to be.
mm.
You need to at times take a break and actually think about it consciously rather than letting your subconscious guide you.
But these weren't rules that you were mugging up. These were logical things you were forcing
These
your.
were absolutely logical. There was no marking up in anything. I'm not a person who can just rote learn anything. Even for me, history while doing it in school was about understanding what happened, why it happened.
Got
And
it.
that's the kind of person I am.
It's
Cannot rote learn if my life
it's
depended on
very difficult to do it. Yes, but I mean, what I like about this is you didn't have a whole lot of time, but you said, okay, this is a process that works for me. I've always been a paper person, and and I'm going to do it this way. You made your notes, you were diligent enough, and you say, okay, what if doesn't matter if I don't solve a lot of questions, which you haven't, by the way, but
Correct,
whatever
I
I
know that.
learn, I'm going to do it well. And again, I know you know it, but I think for people who'll be watching this is a really important lesson. By the way, paper person, have you heard of the remarkable tablet? This allows you to write just like paper on a tablet, the exact same thing.
So I've tried different ones, but I'm still more comfortable when I use my own pen and write it through and scribble and figure my way around how things work. I somehow it still works for me rather than I have an iPad as well where we
No,
can
the
use
iPad is horrible.
write notes. No, the new version actually does pretty well with it. The
Oh,
new one that they
okay.
have, especially with the apps that they have for converting it into your written language into.
No, I don't like conversion, but the piece anyhow, separate talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with I hear what you're saying. I'm a very paper person as well. In fact, I spend money on buying $20 notebooks overall, and uh,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where sometimes I want to kind of write stuff down and explain it. But yeah, so let's kind of go back to say this is a sentence correction. Let's go back to critical reasoning. So you seem to be pretty good in critical reasoning. I'm looking at your cementing quiz scores. Right from the first cementing quiz, you had like a 90, and a hard one, you had 80% score, which is phenomenal.
Correct. So again, logic is something that comes naturally, and I understand what the meaning of it is. So as long as you understand a lot of meaning with critical, it's like critical reasoning, then you automatically get those right. That's kind of how I
It's
approach
not
it.
as automatic as you think. I know for you, but I'm looking at this over here. The medium cementing quiz, 90%, hard cementing quiz, 80%, which is phenomenal over here. Is what I would say. And then I can see the improvement in S from a 50% in SC medium over here to basically 100%. And you kind of
Correct. These were different strategies that I was trying out as well. You can remember that by this time I've actually finished
yes.
all my courses. It was just about so the way I did it was when you reach this point, it was in the morning I gave so I had basically I know I had your mock tests that I had as well as the 5 mock tests from GMAT that I bought as well. I said
Yeah.
those are the 5 that I really want to focus on. So
Mhm.
I ended up so from the 9th to the 15th, which was basically a week, I had multiple number of exams that I could give. So in the morning I used to give, like during my time slot, I used to give an exam. So I
Mhm.
got comfortable giving an online exam for the entire duration without getting up and creating that environment. And then after that, looking at my scores where it was, I took up different quizzes that I was trying different strategies. So you will see certain quizzes where I've done really bad to some I've done well
Mhm.
on the same day as well. Like for example, even
This
here
was
where
over
this is
here.
40.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the hard quiz. And then I like how you went back to an SC medium to say, let me shore up my confidence. Maybe that's what you were doing.
So it was a variation. It was about me saying, okay, how do I change things? How do I
Mhm.
try different strategies out as well? So that was me using a lot of the scholarinium for trying out different strategies, seeing what works, getting back to identifying what works for me.
And the nice thing was that you know, even so you did well a lot of the times, but even when you faltered, it wasn't as you said, oh man, hell's gonna freeze over, and it's gonna really say, hey, what the hell? Now I have my exam in 5 days or 3 days in this case.
It did. So you have to remember that I took a test every single day leading up
So
to my
you
exam.
also had those
And
scores.
I had those scores. I knew what I was getting at, where I was. So initially, my problem was with the first 2 scores, I didn't finish my paper.
Mhm.
So I then said, okay, I know my concept. I'm getting like with math in my practices, I was getting my 50s and 51s.
Got it.
Okay, but it was about I didn't finish it. I was like, I'm leaving a few questions out towards the end. Shouldn't be doing that. How do I shore it up, build up that? Same thing with verbal. The first full practice that I gave, I didn't finish my verbal paper because I spent way too much time on the reading comprehension in terms of writing down the entire notes, like breaking down each paragraph into saying, what is this paragraph trying to convey?
Mhm.
Um, how do I note it down? Saying, okay, this is what this entire paragraph, the gist of this paragraph is this, 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 this. Overall, this is what the entire paragraph is
Mhm.
in terms of what they're trying to write. So trying to do that took up a lot more time, where I
But
spent a lot more time about doing, where I realized that I don't need to write everything down. So those were the strategies that I built up as I took more
How
exams.
did you realize you didn't need to write this thing?
So I'm like, so then it was about reflecting on these and saying, do I really need to write down every single point from each paragraph saying this is what is important? Even though I was writing quick shorthand notes, it still took up time. You are a faster reader than when you have to read and write as well.
Agreed. So let's go back to that reflection. How would you reflect that? Because that's pivotal for me.
So it's about knowing when you read through it, of subconsciously understanding what points are important, because there's certain points that need to be written down. Even for me, even at the end of it, even I did
Even
have
by the
certain
time
things.
you still wrote down a few points on the official test, but not everything.
Correct. Not every single major one. It's just about realizing, writing short, saying, okay, there's an example here. I don't need to really know what that example said. Just say example 1, example 2, example 3.
Yes.
And for example, if there was a change in what the author was trying to convince, where up to the first paragraph it was all positive, and then he or she shifted towards a different point of view.
The transitions.
That transition was important, of noting that this is where the transition happened. And at the end, of course, writing down what was the author trying to convey out of all of it. Before reading any of the questions is something I did.
So you transitioned, frankly, from reading like an engineer to reading like a manager.
Yeah, kind of. So that transition happened, and so tried to writing those, so had those things, and then said, okay, let's now look at how do I keep improving, and how do I reduce the time, and how do I focus on what's important for me to get right. Where
But I mean, the
a lot
nice
of
thing
time,
about all of this is, even though you did that, you first started with writing everything down, and then you said what's important and what's not. You actually made those conscious decisions. You didn't skim. You didn't really say, I'm gonna just read the first line, the last line. You still read the entire passage, and you said,
so
think certain parts.
correct. And that's how, as a reader, I've always been, even with comparates, like given the fact that English, I'm more comfortable with English as a language than my mother tongue itself,
Mm-hmm.
because of the number of years I've
I think
spoken it,
all of us
number
are.
of years. Uh, so, and for me, that's an understanding, reading books and understanding, doing surveys, understanding, like, these are things that I'm used to doing, of not making, just reading the first and the last and then try to fill in the gaps. You still read quickly in terms of letting your mind do what it's good at, in terms of subconsciously understanding where this is going to lead, of saying this is where it's going to go from point A to point B. And that at times, certain things you can kind of, based on the way the text is written, you can skim a few. It's not skim, it's about reading quickly.
It's about reading quickly. It's, as I said, the examples, for example, you just need to know example 1, example 2, example 3. You don't need to know the details of those examples. But when transitions happen, when comparisons are made, when the author really uses certain words to express his own opinion about something,
Correct.
that's when you need
So
to focus.
yeah, that, and those are the things that have been written down with me as well. And it's not just, if I didn't, like with the especially on the exam day, I didn't necessarily have space to write because I got a really long paragraph very quickly as well, and I'm like, I don't necessarily have the time to spend a lot of time just writing every single time. I wrote quick shorthand notes, but I wrote it on what line it is on my main paragraph that I can read to if I have to. That was the other thing I started doing, where it was quick shorthand. If I felt that I didn't necessarily, when I read it back sometime later with the later questions, if I don't have the time to truly understand what it is, that as long as I have a line number, I have a reference to where I'm writing it about, makes it easier for me to get to it as well.
So let's kind of go back to critical reason. Did you use pre-thinking while solving
I
questions?
did. I absolutely did. But that was, given the fact that that came naturally to me, made things easier.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's very good. So let's kind of go.
And in fact,
Yeah.
it was a critical reasoning pre-thinking course that actually made me sign up with
Ah,
you
the pre-thinking session.
guys.
Okay.
The original pre-thinking session is what made me sign up with you guys for the attack course.
Oh, wow.
The free seminar that you had, but I think Payal was the one who's hosting that one.
No, pre-thinking is usually me. Payal doesn't do pre-thinking. So Payal does meaning, Payal does RC. She also does quant at times.
Okay, so I attended more sessions with Payal. I think I only attended one of yours. So I think it was meaning, the meaning-based
Probably
one
was
with
SC meaning, yes.
yeah, which I liked as well. So
Yeah,
A
math
lot
is
of,
phenomenal in that case.
yeah. And so for me, pre-thinking and meaning, they go hand in hand. You can't have, so that's why I kind of get confused between when you talk about pre-thinking, when you talk about meaning. For me, and that was a good session to attend. I said, yeah, I like it. I think it makes sense for me to try and look at how do I take it to the next step. And that's when I signed up for the overall package as well.
Got it. Okay. All right. That sounds wonderful. So now tell me one thing. I know you worked a lot on your timing piece. You were able to fix it. On the actual test, was there any question where you felt, okay, hey, it's not worth it, I'm going to let it go? I mean, was there something?
So with Quant, not so much, but there were certain questions where once I submitted the answer, I knew I got it wrong. Because
Okay.
I'm like, shit, not that one. And which is why I got a 49. And Quant, for me, I got a little phased because I had a couple of issues with the entire session as well, where
With
things
the
were like
online GMAT.
with the online GMAT. So that kind of got me a little riled up, and I had to spend a little more time kind of starting to get back into the flow again. So that took a little bit away
So you had
from.
interruptions. Is that what you're saying?
I had interruptions, and I also had certain issues with where my next button was and where my cancel button was. I almost canceled my test, and luckily for me, the proctor there is like, "Are you sure you want to cancel the exam?" I'm like, "Nope, I don't want to cancel the exam."
I only have today. I have to start work from tomorrow. So
Yeah, so it was so those kind of things got me a little flustered, but then I had to get back into the flow of saying, no, I gotta calm down. Let's get through with it. It's
yeah, I mean, when you are in
but
that zone that you were, which you were in, Q50, Q51, a couple of mistakes would mess you up. Yes, mess up.
correct, which is what led me to the 49 at the end of it. It's like I did screw up a few more questions than I would have liked to,
Okay.
and I did guess in the last three questions. I pretty much guessed my way through it
Verbal or
because I quant
quant? Okay.
because of all the issues that I went through in terms of timing and everything. I was like, I have 2 minutes left. I need to do three questions.
You could have been
I
a 750 then.
could have. I'm not going to go back and say I could have done this. I could have. There's always.
I know.
I. It's about being happy. I could have done that, and then I could have screwed up verbal
Yeah.
and gotten a 35 or a 30 in verbal, and then gotten a 690 rather than 730 that I have as well. So there are both pros and cons of where I look at it. So
Agreed. Yes. Okay. All right. So we've talked enough about the GMAT. So we're talking about, you being in a fairly technical role, and now you want to go more into a place where you can understand how decisions are made. You could justify decisions, make someone on your own. And schools that you're aiming for: Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and then you have LBS and HEC, Paris. So so tell me, A, how can we help you, and B, I mean, just if you want to give a background about why you want to be in this space, or what is it that you do, and where you want to go next.
okay, sure. So I am a product engineer by trade. When I say product engineer, I literally design products for a living, hardware products for a living, ranging from consumer appliances and medical devices to ed tech products to now being in the food realm where we're trying to work with the companies that I'm working on are focused on reducing food waste and delivering high quality food to
Okay.
customers on a delivery basis. So for me, getting a problem statement and defining what a problem is, and then taking it from there, understanding the true needs of a customer and consumer, and getting a successful product out to market is something I do well. But I
Give me an
don't
example
necessarily.
of a product that you probably have designed in the recent past or sometime in the past.
So,
A kind of product.
let's.
Name doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, a lot of consumer kitchen appliances like your Oxers and your Good Grips, all of those. A few of those products have been designed by me when I was part of a different group.
Oh, the OXO
Where,
appliances or the OXO products? Oh, there's some really high quality.
like, so a couple of them that I've been part of their design process or thinking about it. Then more after that, when I transition out of product design firms more to hardcore ones, I have designed, they're more automation and robotics products. So not something that a lot of people will know about
Okay.
in terms of, given the fact that they're mostly in a factory setting or in situations where people don't necessarily think, oh, this is a great product to have, because you're not looking at what the product internally does. You
Got
know
it.
the end product. You don't necessarily know how you got there.
Got it. Okay. We talked about the school. So I mean, how can you seem to have done a lot of good research on schools. So I don't know.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so schools is something that I've done my research on. I like the fact that you gave me inputs about looking at Berkeley as well as INSEAD. INSEAD, I might give it another shot based on
Mm.
you, and I think a couple more other people have spoken about it as well, but I'm not sure. Given the two AdCom seminars that I was part of and I had questions, it just didn't feel right as a fit. And I tend to trust my gut instincts a lot.
Yes.
And that's true even for my GMAT exam. A lot of it, if in doubt, always go with your gut. Your gut is,
If it has
as
worked for
long as
you,
you,
absolutely yes. And for
yeah,
you,
as long as it works. And it's about knowing. So when you start questioning your gut and saying, is this right? And, or can this also be right? That's when you start getting confused. But a lot of times, the first answer that comes to you is usually the right one. When you start overthinking it is where it can lead you down a path where you're not sure of, or is this the right thing to do?
got it.
And coming back to schools, so for me, social impact and social change is something that I'm very passionate about. And I felt that these schools that we looked at
Mm.
seem to give those a lot of importance, especially Stanford and MIT for that matter,
Yep.
where they focus a lot on social impact, social cause, and how to kind of keep that central to what we're trying to do. Like having met a lot of professors here to alums from Stanford, being in the Bay Area, that's kind of a big advantage that you do when you have networking sessions. You do meet a lot of different people from different backgrounds and professors. You attend seminars, you attend their free classes. You get to know that, and that vibe of Stanford and MIT, having been lived in Boston prior to this, is something I really like, and which is why they're there as my skills.
Good.
And uh, in terms of help, of course, I'm happy to get as much and any feedback I can on my applications, tips if anyone has, or if you know people there. I would love to talk to it. So the more, I'm someone that's open to feedback, as much feedback as I get
Mm-hmm.
is better for me, because it's then I understand it's up to the person to then decide whether they want to take the feedback or not. But as long as you keep an open mind, constructive criticism, I think, has worked well for me.
Are you looking
And
to work with an admission consultant?
I am not.
You're
I
not.
like
So how are you planning to do
given
the application?
so a lot of it. I kind of look through the process saying what needs to be done. Where is there? I attend these different seminars, so understand what they're looking for. Ask the AdCom guys the questions that they
Mm.
have, what they're looking for, trying to get a better understanding of it. Given the fact that I have something close to 9 years of experience, having lived in the US and done different things, and like my story, I think can be told best by me, not by another consultant. That's how I look at
I agree.
going going with me rather than looking at a consultant.
I
I'm
agree.
like, yes, consultants work for some people.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if they're going to be able to capture me and my profile and what I'm trying to do.
So most consultants will, I'd say good consultants will be able to, and they do add, there is a definite value add, but I think you rightly said, it just has to be, you have to be comfortable working with a consultant is what I would say. Now,
Mm-hmm.
uh, one thing that I would say is it's about 9th of October. You have about what, 2.5 months for your application, more
Mm-hmm.
or less. Uh, don't leave it till the end.
Oh no, absolutely not. So, as I mentioned, I was transitioning between jobs as well. I do want to finish most of my applications by latest by end of November. Not even keeping it to December. December is just going to be making sure, reading through it, making sure everything is good. before I finally submitted, giving my recommenders enough time for them to write my recommendation, submit it on time. I want to make sure they have
They would
submitted
take about a month. Yes.
that they have submitted it before I actually end up saying, yeah, this is everything is good. Giving them, I've already given them a heads up with these universities and said, I put your name in. You guys should have already gotten it. And trying to line up
Mm.
meetings with my advisors and mentors and recommenders as well. But given the current situation, it becomes a little hard to meet face to face. I'm
I know.
more of a person that likes meeting with people, going out for a coffee and discussing these things out.
One of the other things I will tell you is, what worked for you when you were preparing for the GMAT. Something similar is going to work for you when you prepare, when you do write your application, which is intensive sessions rather than, so it's much better to be methodical in the same way you write things down and say, okay, these are my accomplishments, these are the various attributes, but and do good 2-3 hour intensive sessions. If you mentioned your wife bought GMAT books for you, which means that she is somewhat interested in this space. If you work with her, use her as a sounding board. If you guys have that kind of a relationship, then in that case, that's something that I would really recommend as well. If that,
Right. So she does review. So she's actually better at English than I am, and especially at converting my passive sentences to more of an active and try to do that is something that she does. And but even before that, it goes through a few drafts within myself, and then she's one, and then I have a few good people like my cousins who have gone through this process, and I know can give me good feedback. So they do a lot more review of my essays as well, and kind of give me feedback saying, yeah, it works, it doesn't come through. And given the fact that yes, they're back in India now, but given their background, they do interview candidates as well, and
That's
so they
excellent.
have seen. But again, it's not for the schools. I'm looking. They're doing it more for the Indian schools, like your ISB, IM, as well as SPG. And so there, it's more about. So I do sit with them and talk
ISB
to
is
them,
going to be
understand.
much more relevant, I would say, for the school.
Correct, but it's still about having gone through the process. They know what to look for, what not, and what clicks for them, what doesn't, and they have seen me grow as a professional, as a person over so many years. So they understand me. They understand what I'm trying to communicate the best. So if they don't get it, then I know someone else is not. And so it's easier to work with them where we sit and say, here's what I have. Give me your thoughts. And they're brutal about it.
That's good.
And given the fact that I've known them so well, I know they mean well for me. So I can take that brutality for them. That, yeah, this is a piece of trash, throw it out, start again. I've literally gotten feedback, trust me. And I think my worst critic is going to be my wife, who she looks at it. She's like, I was recently trying to submit for one of the colleges. I was trying to finish up something. Said, this is my answer. She's like, you sure this is your answer? I'm like, yeah, I'm not reviewing it. It's not even worth my time to review it. Go back and start off again. I said, yeah.
Well,
She's
I'm
like, you
glad.
would spend
I'm
time.
glad. You're very lucky to have such people in your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's good. I do believe that I have a good set of people that I can fall back on for support with a lot of these